Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast created for women who listen to and live by their deepest wisdom, their inner voice. This was made for you, the woman who feels pulled to more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to be a world changer. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am an inner voice coach. Join me here each week as we explore what it means to reach for your inspired potential, all while honoring your worthiness each and every day. Hey, you guys, this is Kelly Covert, and you are listening to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for allowing me space in your day, for coming and turning on your iPod or your iPhone. Do people still have iPods even? I don't know. But thank you for allowing me inside your life because it really, really means a lot to me. So I want you to pull up a chair, grab your coffee or your wine, whatever time of day you might be listening to this, and get ready for a really great interview with my very good friend, Casey O'Rourke of Joyful Courage. She's the host of the Joyful Courage podcast, and she is an amazing parenting coach and a very, very good personal friend of mine. And we are talking all about the release of her upcoming book, Joyful Courage, which is a parenting book. But this podcast today is about how those principles of self-awareness that she teaches in her book can help us be not just better parents, but help us navigate the emotions of our lives and help us navigate communication and help us navigate what it means to be a human on this earth. So I'm so excited to share my beautiful friend and author, Casey, with you. Before we get to the interview, I just want to quickly remind you that 5 days of journaling on your inspired potential starts Sunday, May 19th. That is this Sunday, and it is not too late to sign up. It's 100% free. And this is for you if you are ready to lay down your expectations, to let go of your shoulds, to stop living up to your potential by checking things off the list or by hitting all of the marks or trying to hit all of the marks, but to live into your power, to live into who you really are. So this is 5 days of journaling prompts and deep connection and discussion with me. It's 100% free. And this is a gift that you can give yourself coming into summer. Really give yourself that sacred time of connecting and listening to your inner voice. So you can sign up for that at kellycovert.com/journal. And the live link is right in whatever podcast app that you're listening to. So now I want to get right to the interview with Casey. You guys are going to love her. Casey O'Rourke, welcome back to In Her Voice.
I am so happy to be here to hear your voice.
You guys listening are just going to have to indulge us a little bit because we don't get to talk nearly enough. And Casey is an in real life friend that I just adore. And this is your second time on the podcast, yeah?
It is.
Oh my gosh, look at you.
And it's crazy, Kel, to think about. Was it 2 years ago or 1 year ago?
It'll be 2 years this summer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like everything that has transpired in the last 2 years, it's just wild to think about. Yeah. So I'm glad to be back.
So you're here because you're awesome and because you have written a book.
Oh my God.
And the name of this book is Joyful Courage, Calming the Drama and Taking Control of Your Parenting Journey.
Yes.
And while this isn't necessarily a parenting podcast, I think that there are a lot of moms that listen to this. And I think that the idea of self-awareness and self-regulation and taking control of our journey is something that we can relate to whether or not we have kids. So I'm super excited just to dive in. And I thought that we would start with what is, when you talk about self-awareness, maybe we should start with a story, right? Like, can you give us an example of how, as parents, as people, how we can reframe any experience that we are in to understand that we can take control.
I mean, which story do I share right now? I think that, so the book is really about, it is about self-awareness, and it's, it's in the context of parenting, but really the experience and the tools that I share in the book are human. They're human tools. We're just talking about it in the context of the parent-child relationship. And so, like one story that comes to mind for me is, it's a kind of a basic one, but back in January, I was getting ready to start I do live classes with parents. I do 7-week classes, and I had a new group that I was going to be meeting. It was a Wednesday that night, and I was kind of just getting things ready in the kitchen because I was leaving and my husband's gone, and I'm letting the kids know, what I have set up for them to eat and how I want the house to look when I get back. And I can feel this, like, I'm not totally aware of it in the moment, but looking back, there was this kind of feeling of urgency in my body, which manifests as kind of just like tingles and some tension, and that feeling like there's not a lot of exhale, but there's a lot of inhale. And I'm agitated, right? And the kids are doing nothing. Like, not that they're doing nothing, but like they're doing nothing to prompt what I'm feeling. It's just, it exists, and because it exists, I'm becoming even more irritated, and and it really wasn't anything the kids could do or say that I wouldn't snap at. And and then I said, then it was just, okay, I'm going. I'll see you when I get back. And I got in the car and I got to the school that I was going to be teaching at. And I sat there for a second and I realized, oh, I'm nervous about tonight. Like, I'm meeting a new group of parents. And even though I'm really a skilled and seasoned facilitator, that first night always comes with a little bit of nerves. And I thought, oh, that's why I was acting the way that I was acting at home with the kids. And so just having a little bit of space away and recognizing, like, oh, yes. And I shot them a text before I started my class and just kind of owned how I behaved and mentioned, I have a new class coming. And so I was feeling nervous, and I was taking it out on you guys, and I'm sorry. And I'll see you later, and I love you. And they, of course, are like, oh, here's mom having her self-awareness moment. But, they get it, and they get to see me taking some personal responsibility over my actions and being accountable. So that's one story. But typically for me, what I've learned over time is to start to recognize what's happening in my body as a signal to check in and find my center, so that I can remain more in the design of the experience that I want to have. So, and that's really what the book is all about.
So when you say remain in the design of the experience you want to have, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we're always influencing our experience, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. How we respond or react to the events and experiences of our life influence whatever the outcome is, whatever the follow-through or follow-up is. And my goal is always, or as often as possible, I'm not going to say always. It would be lovely if it was always, but I am not the Buddha.
Oh, wait, you are not perfect?
I am not perfect. Spoiler alert, people. But to be, as often as possible, being conscious of the ways that I'm responding. And even like yesterday, I have another story. So yesterday, my daughter does online school, and so she has lots of flexibility in her day, and we were going to go to the gym together, and she decided, and I was going a little earlier than she was ready to go. She said, I'll meet you there. I said, okay, great. And I was finishing up my run, and she called me in tears saying, the car won't start, and Daddy was the last one that drove it, and I think the battery's dead. And she's just like in total panic, fall apart. And I could feel it. And where I tend to go, like, there's the there's the automatic pilot of like rage, but then there's, for me, one of my automatic pilots is also fix it. Mm-hmm. And so I could feel that desire to want to say, on one hand, I was like, well, you're screwed. And on the other hand, I was like, well, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And I knew that where she was at, it didn't really matter what I said. Like, she was in her own emotional crisis. And so I didn't really say much, other than, wow, that sucks. And I'm sorry that your plans got thwarted. And my goal was in that moment was mostly to have her recognize that, this is a wrench in the plans, but this doesn't have to dictate the rest of her day. And so I really tried to embody that, even as we were just like literally on the phone. She was irritated because it didn't matter what I said. So she got off the phone. And then later on, when I checked in with her, she said, I did a home workout. And first I posted a really dramatic video on my private Snapchat story, which I thought was hilarious. And then she said, but I realized I totally did it for attention because I wanted everybody to be like, oh, are you okay? And I said, hey, guess what? Being aware of what you're doing when you're doing it is awesome. That's a total win. Like, even if it's like, yeah, I realize I did this for this silly reason, and she's like, yeah. And she's like, and she totally bounced back. But that required me to show up for her in a certain way, and so designing the experience is, really about how we show up so that we can get closer to what it is that we want. And for me, it was, I wanted to be connected to her. I wanted her to feel support. But I also didn't want to get dragged into her stuff because she didn't like my ideas. So I just kind of kept my ideas to myself and let her be with her.
I think this is such a huge thing. I know I do this where I take on other people's emotions. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to be aware of that more because I think that the way sort of my default mechanism is if I feel the same way that you do, that will make you feel better. Mm-hmm. And that is not true. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is so common, especially among women, right? Mm-hmm. It's like we want people to feel empathy, but that doesn't mean that you have to pick up those emotions and carry them on your back.
Yeah. And I think that there's that, but I also think that there's a tendency, for some of us, it is wanting to really be in the moment with the person, but there's also, we can just get hijacked. If we're not aware and we're not conscious of what's happening when it's happening, it's so easy to be hijacked by by the people in our life and whatever their emotional experience is. And one of the metaphors that I use in the book, the metaphor of the book is the emotional freight train. And it was something that my son and I, when he was really young, we came up with to kind of describe how it felt when you get angry or you're disappointed or you're embarrassed or whatever the emotion is that shows up because of an event or an experience. And then it just kind of snowballs. And it's like, we said it's like the emotional freight train. It just kind of picks you up and then you're hurtling down the tracks. And you're not the driver. The train is in charge. The emotions are in charge. And that's when we say and do things that we later, we have a mess to clean up usually after that. If we kind of are hands in the air, let's go, And so in the book, I really talk about one, first of all, recognizing that this happens to everybody, right? It really happens to everybody and it's normal. And we can learn to be more aware of when it's happening. And when we're aware that it's happening, we can make a choice on whether or not we're going to stay on the train or get off. And even the more we practice, we can even start to recognize when the train pulls in. And then it becomes, do we want to get on? And finding those choice points. But sometimes it's somebody else's train that pulls in. And we get on their train. Right? I mean, think about when your partner comes home and they're in a bad mood. How quickly whatever's going on for us, it's really easy to kind of slide into that. And then it becomes resentful of them. God, you came home so grumpy and then we're blaming them. I mean, it's It's crazy making, and it's very human, but it's also really surface. I feel like it's just really surface level existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so really my goal with the book is to help parents and really anybody who wants to read it, recognize when they're on the surface and go deeper, and recognizing that we can, that's available. Like, that's the most exciting thing for me, is for someone to read the book and be like, oh, it never even occurred to me that I have choice.
Yeah. I think that's amazing, because I think a lot of times when you're talking about that surface level existence,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what rubs us.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're feeling dissatisfied or disillusioned with your life, or just like not where you want to be, I think a lot of times it's because we're living on the surface and we're not digging in. We're not listening to our inner voice. We're not aligning our lives from a center point
Mm-hmm.
of who we are. Instead, we're aligning our lives with everyone else around us and with the emotional freight train, as you call it. And it doesn't feel good because it's actually not who we are.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah. And I think too that that is really powerful. And I get really lit up when I can invite people into really considering who, we're really good at knowing what we don't want and who we don't want to be. And to be able to say, well, who do you want to be? Be really clear about how you do want to show up. And then we create an anchor, we create that center.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy for, people like you and I, we're life coaches. This is what we do. To find our center, and be grounded and find neutral. But to, the average person on the street, that language is just like, wait, what do you even mean? I don't even know what that means. And so really it's, to me, and it's something, again, that I prompt in the book, it's, becoming aware of who you intend to be, who you want to be, how you want to show up, and not in every day. I mean, every day it's easy, the normal, life, right? Showing up that way. You don't have to give it much thought, but it's when things hit the fan.
Yeah.
Are you that kind, loving, gentle, yet firm parent that you declared you would be? Because that's the big game, right?
Yeah.
That's the big test.
So I think one of the greatest challenges in this way of being, as you describe it, is having the presence of mind to observe ourselves, to take a step back and to watch ourselves, to think about how we're feeling. And again, like you say, to think about who we want to be, how we want to show up. So how do you teach people to do that?
Well, I'm so glad that you asked. So I have a tool that I talk a lot about in the book, and I call it the 3 Bs. And the 3 Bs are breath, body, and balcony. And so what I've learned about breath is that it's really something that can override the nervous system. And often, when we're about to get on the emotional freight train, what is also happening is our nervous system is in high alert, right? We're in our emotional brain. We might even be in our survival, fight or flight. And so one way to connect with the nervous system is through breath. And what I learned, which I think is so cool, is actually when we inhale, when the body inhales, the heart rate increases. And when the body exhales, the heart rate decreases. And so if we are intentional simply about taking longer exhales than inhales, if that's the only thing we can do when we're ready to rage on our family, if the only thing we can do is start to take longer exhales, it's going to make a difference to how our body feels. So I love that. So starting with breath.
That seems easy. I love how simple that is.
Right. We don't have to talk ourselves out of anything. We don't have to do anything other than breathe. And so starting with breath and really, taking that first, and it is a choice. We also we get to say, okay, here I am. I'm going to take my breaths, and then following the breath into the body and releasing the tension of the body. right? Noticing where there is tension or being willing to at least examine. Sometimes the tension is tough to let go of, and that's okay. But doing that body scan, and then from that place of a more connected breath and body, we can take what I call the balcony seat, which is exactly what you're talking about, that observer. And then from the balcony seat, that's where we can kind of look at bigger picture. What's happening for the other person? Is this mine? Is this theirs? Is this something that needs to be solved right now? What do I need to show up in the way I want to show up? How do I want to show up? The balcony seat gives us some space. And now, again, accessing even this lovely 3Bs in the heat of the moment is really hard if that's the only time you try to access it.
Yeah.
And so something that I encourage my clients and any of the people that I work with to do is to create a practice where throughout the day, they're taking 30 seconds and they're thinking, finding my breath, scanning my body, taking the balcony seat. And they might be on a walk with their dog. They might be commuting to work. They might be at the grocery store. But just that 30 seconds to just step into the practice when you don't need it is going to make it a lot more likely, because it'll be more familiar, that you can access it when you do need it. So I'm all about like phone alarms and Post-it notes and visuals that support people in remembering like, oh, right, I have this practice that I need, that I get to become more familiar with, you know?
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of practicing versus performing. So as a musician, I practice so that when I'm in a performance, I don't have to be thinking about the same kinds of things that I think about when I'm practicing.
Yes.
And so we can think of those interactions with our kids or with our family members or whoever that have the potential to derail you as the performance. So you can't expect to go into a performance cold,
right,
without having ever practiced it.
Exactly.
And that's so powerful. And the beautiful thing I think about this, it's quick, it's easy to remember.
Yeah, 3Bs.
And it's going to benefit you in ways you might not realize, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Right. I mean, like I said, I wrote this book in the context of parenting, but this is like walking in to get a performance review at work. This is useful, to having really challenging conversations with a girlfriend, or, advocating for yourself. I mean, it's not a parenting tool. It's a humaning tool. And it's really, again, all about creating a little bit of space. Like, first, it's discovering that this is possible. I think a lot of people feel like, well, I just react. That's just my personality. That's just who I am. And I would challenge that and say that this is available to anyone who's willing to choose it, right? It does require, in those moments, even if you've practiced a whole bunch, like even me, it does require in the moment when I'm really pissed off to recognize like, okay, here I am. Am I going to walk my talk right now? Or am I going to let them have it? And you know what, Kelly, some days I'm like, I'm going to let them have it.
And, I appreciate you saying that, because it doesn't have to be perfect, you guys.
Right.
It doesn't, you don't have to get an A++ for this to work in your lives.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this practice and intuition. So I'm going to tell a quick story. The other day, I woke up my kids in the morning to go to school, and my youngest, Noah, does not like getting up in the morning. He's super grumpy, and I don't love our morning relationship.
It's a lovely way to put it.
And so I went in to wake him up, and he was in a bad mood, and I just left. I went back into my room, and I got dressed, and I was sort of coaching myself as I brushed my teeth. And I really felt that my inner voice was saying to me, don't talk to him. And I did not like that, because I thought, well, I need to tell him he needs to remember this, and I need to tell him to have a good day and, check in and see if anything's wrong. and all of the things that I normally do that never yield a good response. And my inner voice was like, no, just don't say anything. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go with that. That's what I'm really feeling like I need to be doing. And I'm going to go with that. And so I went downstairs and I said only the most necessary things, just like 6:48, because he knows at 6:48, that's when he needs to go brush his teeth. I didn't say go brush your teeth. I didn't say hurry. I didn't, say, did you remember your trumpet or anything like that? Just, I think maybe total, I said 15 words the whole morning. And it was the most calm morning that we've had in a really long time. And what struck me is that my inner voice knows, my intuition knows how I need to be parenting, even if it doesn't feel like how I need to be parenting, if it goes against what I think I should be doing. So in the sort of view of these 3 Bs and designing our experiences, like the way we want to design them, how does our intuition come into play?
Well, I think that is a beautiful example. And did you write about this? I feel like I read. Did you put something on Instagram?
A story. Yeah, I did an Instagram story on it. Yeah,
because I'm like, why is this familiar?
Yeah.
I mean, well, and that's the thing, right? Like, for sure, our intuition and our inner voice come in to play. And I think when it comes to parenting, there's so many messages. Not only the messages, but there's the what will people think, and there's the fear. I mean, I'm thinking of my own. There's like something really current and alive, and my gut is telling me one thing, and I'm like, but. So it's. I mean, yes, and I think intuition is something that is readily available while also can feel elusive and I need to listen to more of your podcasts, clearly, because there's what we know and what we feel, right? And I think that what we feel is equally if not more valuable, and I think when we can pause and slow down and find our breath and find our body, I think that's where we create space for intuition to show up. Because
I think that's a kind of intuition. I think our bodies, what our bodies tell us in these moments, that is intuition. Yeah. That's how our inner voice can speak to us.
For sure. And I think that as, 2019 human beings in our culture, we've a lot of popular culture kind of suppresses what happens below the neck. And so it's really, it can be a big ask for people to start to pay attention, and again, I just wanted something simple and useful. And I also want people to know too, that if you're just stepping into this, if this is, kind of the first time that you've thought or considered like, oh, maybe I can create space and hear my inner voice, hear my intuition, it'll feel wobbly and you'll question it. And that's just part of the process. I really admire people that wholeheartedly, like, I love Reiki people. Do you do Reiki? You do Reiki, right?
I have a certification. I don't practice it a lot, but I do believe in it.
Yeah, I have a really good friend that I actually mentored with last year, and she does Reiki work, and she's just so gifted at letting go. I think it's really like all the clutter and all the armor, baggage, whatever you want to call it, that's like piled on energetically, that I think is what suppresses our inner voice, or at least makes it just a duller volume. Yeah. And she's so gifted at it's just like she parts the water and is such a conduit for her own intuition. And I mean, she's like super tuned in. So she's getting all sorts of messages, but to be able, and it's a practice, right? It's a practice to recognize like, oh, there's actually another layer there. There's that layer of fear that's clouding what I can hear right now, or there's that layer of judgment or worry about being judged that's clouding what I can hear. What happens when I move that to the side? What exists there? But we got to slow down and find stillness before we can even start having those experiences.
Yeah. And I think when you speak of fear, that's where joyful courage comes in. I mean, this is your brand and it's so beautiful. But I think as a parent and as a human, we have to be joyfully forging forward into our fear. Like that is really how we discover what it means to be alive.
Yeah. And if it's not a joyful experience for you, that's okay too. Like when I think about, when I think about joyful courage for me, I am a total personal growth and development junkie. I'm like, let's get in it. Let's talk about it. Let's process. Like I will bare my soul to you, and I'm happy to have you tell me what you see, and and I think for me, I get so excited by personal growth that that's what joyful courage is really about, is like, yes, being able to, when it's really hard, even when it's a really hard, heavy experience that you're living through, having somewhere, somehow being able to be like, yes, this is actually going to take me to a new place. And just trusting that, even if in the moment it's like, but you know what, screw joyful. I'm not feeling very joyful. That's okay. Just being in the gratitude of, or at least knowing that there will be gratitude at some point, right? Trusting that is, it's happening for you.
It's so good, Casey. It's so good. It's so good. I'm so proud of you for writing this book. When Casey mentioned 2 years ago, we went to a podcast
Total blind date
together. Yeah. We're like, hey, we knew each other online, but not in person. And we roomed together and it was like a match made in heaven.
Yeah. So
awesome. That was the beginning of your book.
That was the beginning of my book. I can't believe it took me so long, but it's okay. Yeah, and it's interesting. Okay. I was saying before you hit record, I too have a podcast, and Joyful Courage, and I pour out every week. I'm very transparent and authentic in talking about my journey with parenting, and I interview people, and I never really. There's been a few episodes where I've gotten where I felt a little bit like, oh gosh, maybe that was TMI.
Hangover.
Yeah, totally. But this book feels very vulnerable. And I don't know if it's just the medium or the sharing or I don't know what it is, but I'm deciding right now in this moment that how I feel about it just is an indication of how important it is for me to put it out there. So
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So in your life right now, you might have just told us, but I'll ask it again. What is your inner voice asking of you?
In my life right now, today, my inner voice is, has been really pointing me in the direction of looking at, being the designer and of abundance. I've been doing this really cool new meditation. I'll have to send it to you.
Please.
An insight timer. It's
Love
a law of attraction.
I use it all the time.
Yep. It's a law of attraction meditation. And I worked with my finance coach yesterday and just like feeling momentum and feeling a big shift in my mindset around my life, and really noticing the conversations that I have around this probably won't work out. This probably, like that scarcity mindset has, and I've always, you and I both know that this is not a new conversation for me. But like, I'm really finally feeling like there's a momentum and a shift there. And it's definitely, my intuition is definitely showing up. And it's showing up in the gym. It's showing up in my relationships with my kids and my partner. And we've got a big move happening this summer, which I'm really excited about and nervous and all the things. And I'm just really hearing like face forward and trust. And it's all there. Everything I want is there, and just ask. Which sounds really cliche, but
you know what? That's okay. Sometimes my inner voice talks in cliches too, and I'm fine with it.
okay. I'm not going to judge my inner voice.
Do not.
Gosh.
No.
Sorry, inner voice.
So I know everyone's going to want to read this book and also connect with you. So how do they get their hands on a copy, and how do they connect with you to go deeper?
Well, they can go to my website, which is joyfulcourage.com, and there they will find, you listeners will find links to my podcast and any other offers I do. I've been doing programs for parents of teenagers, and you can find my book there. The pre-sale, which it has already happened as of when you release this episode. It hasn't happened yet as of the recording, but April 10th is when the book becomes available for pre-sale, and it'll be up on Amazon and other places. You'll have to put it in the show notes because in this moment I'm not sure where.
Yes, we will.
Pre-sale, the exciting thing about pre-sale is there will be a download companion something or other that's going to be very exciting, that will go like a companion guide to the book for people that sign up for the pre-sale. So that's exciting. And then the launch is May 20th. So as long as you get your order in before May 20th, you'll also be getting the companion guide.
Yay. I'm so proud of you.
And I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. And
yes.
I've got a really two lovely parenting communities on Facebook. One is called Live and Love with Joyful Courage. And in there you will find like-minded parents with kids of all ages. And I realized earlier this year that I really needed a space for just the parents of teenagers.
Amen, sister.
Because no parent of teenagers wants to hear advice from someone who doesn't have one yet. So I created a group called Joyful Courage Parents of Teens on Facebook that your listeners are welcome to join for support and celebrations and challenges, and all the things show up in there. So
I need to get in that group.
Get in there.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I can't wait. Casey, thank you for sharing your joy and your wisdom and your courage and yourself with us today. I'm so thankful to have you in my life.
I love you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing me with your people.
Okay, you guys. It is time for you and me and all of us to start practicing our 3 B's: breath, body, balcony seat. Oh my gosh, if there is one thing that you can take away from this interview today, it is that. That is such a valuable tool. And if you can do that, start doing that when you feel that emotion come up in you. Breathe. Examine your body, find the tension, and observe. So powerful. Thank you, Casey, for sharing that with us. And just a reminder, another way for you to become self-aware, for you to understand more of who you are, is through the sacred practice of journaling. Join me starting on Sunday for our next 5 days of journaling challenge on your inspired potential, and give yourself that gift. Give yourself that time and wait and see what will happen. I want to remind you, you are powerful. You are creative. You are special. And we need you in this world, being and honoring you. You are worthy.